Welcome to Tales from Flat Space, a podcast of science fiction and fantasy by yours truly, Gina A. Pond. Just know that the stories in this podcast may contain content that could be disturbing to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. This is Part 3, Chaos, Chapter 32, Jessica. I stared out at the viewport, not too far from the Zimmerle's quarters. Fucking coward had to go and kill himself, making me have to do that, I thought. I tried to stare at the stars, attempting to let their movement calm me down, but this was bigger than me and something I couldn't fight or fuck my way out of. I fiddled with my necklace and tried not to look as agitated as I felt. I thought I'd find you here, John said behind me. I turned around. The man was always so infuriatingly calm. It made me want to strangle him, but I resisted the urge. He looked at me, taking in my body language, and just said, "Airlock 5. What? You're a demon. It's stocked with enough provisions for a month, plus emergency rations. I've taken you off the active list indefinitely. No one is going to bother you until I say so." My violent urges receded, and confusion took its place. How? Jessica, you and I have worked together for a very long time now. I know just how old you are, and that you're nearing the age where it's time to really think about what you want to do with the second half of your life. This is also the first time someone has suicided on your watch, and you need to get control of your anger. Every time you get this angry, you take a demon out to go look at the stars, then spend some time on Hef. This time I've saved you the trouble of having to prep the demon yourself. Oh, I said. I also have a little surprise waiting for you on Hef, and an opportunity if you're interested. Hef won't be able to come to you this time around since he's doing the final work on a long-term project, but I programmed his coordinates into the demon for when you're ready. John put his hands behind his back and started to walk away. I sighed and followed him. Opportunity? I asked. It's a permanent posting, but Hef will fill you in when you get there. It's compartmentalized, something that the First and the siblings have been working on for a few years now as a backup plan. Okay, I'm intrigued, but no decisions until after I go clear my head. John nodded. Go on, get out of here, before I have to order you to leave. Yes, sir, I said in my best come-hither voice. I knew it wouldn't work on him, but I couldn't resist trying. John just chuckled and shook his head, then turned down a hallway, going a different direction. I watched him leave for a moment, then turned towards the demon airlocks. Several hours later, I was thousands of light years away from Sun Tzu, naked and staring out at a nebula. Sunny had modified the pilot's seats and consoles to recede, and extra blankets were added to the towel compartments. I turned off all the lights in the cabin, turned up the heat, and just floated. I let my mind go, letting my anger consume my thoughts until I could let it go. I drank nutrition shakes when I was hungry, and wrapped myself in blankets and floated when I needed to sleep. Time became a blur, and my mind began to show me memories of my life, replaying things. Some things made me scream into the darkness, and some I didn't want to remember at all. I talked to the ghosts in my head, trying to reassert the careful control of my sociopathy. I failed, until I finally came around to talking to Kai's ghost. You fucking coward, I yelled at him. He didn't say anything, and I didn't expect him to. Why did you have to die on my watch, huh? Leaving a child like that? You fucking bastard, I screamed at him, letting loose all my fury into the darkness. Finally, even Kai's ghost went away. The voices stilled, and there was nothing but me and the nebula. I didn't know how long I stayed there, and I didn't really care. There was peace in the darkness, and some sort of presence who just accepted me as I was. No judgment, no expectations. I didn't know if that was the presence of God, but if it was, I welcomed it. After a time, my rational mind finally began to reassert itself. So did my body, skin itching with the need for a bath. I re-engaged the pilot's console and set the demon moving at 1G so I could shower. I looked in the personal lockers and smiled to see that John had packed me an appropriate wardrobe. I luxuriated in the hot water, washed, dried off, and got dressed in a black catsuit and a black leather jacket. I left the shoes in the locker for the time being. Taking the pilot's seats, I finally looked at the date and time. 2 weeks, I said out loud. Time to get out of here. I keyed the coordinates for Hef. At least on Hef, I knew I could get some more of what I needed. None of the servants were Olka, but I knew a few who could scratch the itch. I sighed and programmed the jump sequence. When I jumped to where Hephaestus was, I gasped at the image on the view screen. There was a massive AI ship in the last stages of construction. It was at least 3 times the size of Lightbringer or Secundus, with people in EVA suits crawling all over the hull. What the hell is that? I thought. John said something about an opportunity. Is this it? I sent the signal to Hef to let him know I was in his space. Welcome, Lulu, said Hef. I've been expecting you. How are you feeling? Much better, thank you. I'll need some of my usual friends, though. I thought as much, considering what Sunny told me. I have a surprise for you, but I'll need to talk to you about something first. It's best done in person, though. John mentioned the surprise, too. Am I going to like this? I asked, with a bit of sharpness. You really do need some playtime, don't you? F said. I frowned as the AI continued. Yes, it's a very good surprise. I've connected your demon, and I'm bringing you in through the internal docking area. It'll take about an hour, so you'll want to get your things together. All right, Hef. It's a good thing I trust you not to mess with me. I never mess with my friends, Jessica, especially friends like you. I blinked at Hef using my actual name. Thank you. I'll see you in an hour. Sit back and relax, my dear. You're on vacation. I smiled in anticipation as I went to pack my bags. Hef himself was waiting for me in the lounge as I exited the docking tube. He was using one of his masculine avatars today, wearing his signature red and black velvet coat and black pants. I smiled and ran to give him a hug, leaving my suitcase by the docking tube. Hef! I said. Hef's avatar hugged me hard. Felt so good to be on his ship again. Hello, my dear. It's been a long time. It has been. I let go and went back for my suitcase, but a woman was already rolling it down the hallway. Don't worry, that's Aya, one of the new servants. I asked her to bring your luggage to your room since we need to talk. She's quite capable, really. It sounded like he was hinting about more than her luggage portering abilities. Are you looking for another apprentice for Gloria? I asked. Hef put my arm in his and led me out of the waiting area towards the private lounges. He nodded. My current Gloria wants to retire. She'll be 70 next month. After all we've been doing lately, she certainly deserves her time off. I'll be sad for her to leave me, but she's found a love, and I couldn't be more happy for her. She's already pregnant, can you believe it? He paused, palming open the door to an empty lounge. There was a low table next to the sunken couches, already loaded with food. Well, come in, dear, and get to eating. Remembering the other few times you took a trip in a demon by yourself before coming here, I know you've been living on nutrition shakes for the last 2 weeks. You and your AI memory, I said, with a slight snarl, but did what I was told. There were fuzzy blankets on the couches, so I wrapped up in one and grabbed the nearest dish. It was a plate full of nachos that smelled divine, and before I knew it, I had finished the whole thing. Hef sat and watched me with a glass of the liquid he used as a drink for his avatars. I wiped my mouth with a napkin and started on a plate of hamburgers. Between bites, I asked, So, John says you have an opportunity along with a surprise? You saw the ship, right? They're called Mercury. It's a generation ship. A generation ship? Hef nodded. The first and I came up with the idea 5 years before we sent you and Marcia to Unity Hub. Some of our scenarios predicted war between Survey and Unity, and as the new harmonists began to rise, that scenario became more likely. It should have gotten less likely after Marcia and Jenny's missions were complete, and it did, but not by as much as we thought it would. We think that this chaos you found is part of the problem. We also have negotiations with Unity coming up that still have an uncertain outcome. He shifted position on the couch to lean forward. We now know there's a group of humans that Loki found in another part of the galaxy, which is where Jack and Marcia went off to. But now that we know where they are, it's just a matter of time before Unity does too. So we pushed up production on Mercury. I downed a beer quickly and picked up a bowl of chicken wings. That's very interesting, Hef, but what does this have to do with me? I'd like you to go and be one of the servant leaders on Mercury. You're one of the few BDSM and sex experts in Survey, and I can think of no one better to serve in that capacity. I put down the bowl. But you just said it's a generation ship. That's right, he said, taking a sip of his drink. They're going to Andromeda. My appetite left me. All I could think of was Oka. Last I knew, he was still in New York Colony, and if I was honest, the only real thing I wanted was to be with him. I don't know, Hef, I said. Well, you rest here for a while and think about it, and I'll go see if your surprise is ready. I think it will help you make your decision. He grinned as if he said something exceedingly clever. Hef. The Avatar stood up. Trust me, my dear. He kissed me on the head and left. I sighed, then stared at the food on the table. I was physically hungry, my enhancements having been pushed too far over the past few weeks, but the weight of the decision made me lose my appetite. Instead, I laid down on the couch, wrapping myself in the blanket, unsure about everything. I hated being so unsure about anything. I must have dozed off because sometime later someone was shaking my shoulder gently, sitting next to me on the couch. Wake up, my pet, they said. I opened my eyes and looked up to see Oka looking down at me with a grin on his face. Daddy? I said with a wide smile. What are you doing here? Sit up, pet, and eat some more, he ordered. Then I'll tell you. I did as he said, grabbing the abandoned bowl of chicken wings. No one else was in the room with us, and the door had a red light over it, which meant the door was locked, and we had use of the room until we left it. My mind was impatient, but I ate mechanically while Daddy watched me polish off the wings. He didn't say anything until after I'd eaten a salad, another burger, and some chocolate pudding. I had to admit, albeit grudgingly, that I was feeling more myself after feeding the bots. I put down the pudding bowl. Daddy patted his lap, and I put my head down on it. When I felt the warmth of his body and felt him pet my hair, I let out a contented sigh. Finally, I thought. Home. Daddy chuckled to himself. Yes, my pet, it is good to be with you too. I missed you a lot, I sighed. I need you. I know. It's part of the reason I'm here. He paused for a moment, then said, But to answer your question, since you've been a good girl, I'm also here because Chaos tried to have me assassinated. Not to mention a number of minor Kozalezis and leftover slavers who took exception to your and my people ruining their business. I took care of them, but it became too dangerous for me to stay in Unity space. There was quite a bit of chaos after you dispatched Paolo, my dear. Beautiful job on that, by the way. The coroner was impressed, if a little nauseated. I smiled. Yes, I was quite proud of that. You should be. Anyway, John Smith offered me sanctuary and Survey and brought me here. He said you'd join me in a few months. Then, a couple of weeks ago, he sent me a picket saying that you were done with your mission and that you were on your way. That's when Hef started to talk to me about you and the Mercury project. He said he told you about it as well. I nodded. He wants me to be part of the servant leadership as a BDSM expert. Us. I sat up and looked him in the eye. Us? From what Hef has told me, all of your existing legends are blown, and you can't go back to Unity Space safely. John also put in his message that you're at a point where it's time for you to retire from fieldwork. I've run my businesses for a long time, and I had been thinking about retiring myself. I have turned all my Unity holdings over to Lewis. He seems quite happy to inherit them from me. John says Lewis is honoring the agreements I had between my businesses and Survey. So, free of the burden of business, I've had a good amount of time to think. And you know, I couldn't think of anyone but you I wanted to spend my retirement with. I breathed in and out, then looked him in the eyes. I love you, Daddy. I want to be with you. I want to wear your collar, permanently. He smiled, then grabbed my hair, pulled me to him, and kissed me hard. I melted into the kiss, knowing that this was where I should be, not just for him, but for me. He bit my lip, then let me go. Kneel, he said. I threw off the blanket and got down on my knees on the floor next to him. He reached beside him and pulled up a flat black box. I hoped you would say that, my pet. He opened it. Laid carefully on the black velvet was a heavy, thick rose gold chain with a lock adorned with a large ruby surrounded by diamonds. My eyes went wide. Oh, Daddy, it's beautiful. Move your hair, he said. I bent my neck and pulled my hair forward. He gently took off the emerald and diamond necklace I was wearing, then put the collar around my neck, the weight of it feeling safe and protective. Stand up. I stood up. His eyes inspected me. Strip. I took off my clothes. I didn't move too slowly, but I didn't rush it either. I was too happy to ruin the mood. Better, he said, standing up. He wrapped the other necklace around my wrist. That was the necklace your father gave you, right? He asked. I nodded, surprised he remembered. He grinned. I'll have that made into a bracelet for you, he said, then led me by the collar to the center of the room, away from the couches. He palmed open a cabinet that was full of whips, floggers, and other instruments. I'm rather impressed by Hef's collection. I'll have to ask him to outfit us properly. He picked up a whip, inspected it, then put it back down. My body started to shiver. Now let's see. We need to rewrite our contract and decide how to set up our quarters, but we can do that later. What I really want to know now is exactly what you want from me. He pulled out a riding crop and slapped it against his palm. I shivered again. Yes, this will do. He moved fast from the cabinet to me, then snapped the riding crop. Tell me, pet, he ordered calmly. I started to say, and he whipped my thigh. No doubts, pet. Say it. My mind started to race. What did I want from him? I knew he loved me. Did I want to marry him? Did I want him just to fuck me? Fuck, I thought. As he worked me over, just one thought bubbled to the top. He grabbed my hair to force me to look at him and put the riding crop against my clit. Tell me now, pet, he ordered, staring into my soul. Call me by my name? My real name, I finally blurted out. He smiled. I love you, Jessica. I have from the first time we met. I want to leave this galaxy with you. I nodded, tears rolling down my cheeks. He licked them off, then kissed me hard. He moved the riding crop back and forth between my legs, and I let him do what he wanted with me. Later, when he carried me gently to our quarters on Hef, I knew that I was home for good. Chapter 33. Giannis. We'd been sitting at the computer lab, looking at the code for hours, still not making any headway. Marcus was sitting at his desk, holding his head in his hands. I raked my hand through my hair, then moved my chair away from the desk. Ugh, I can't think anymore, I said. There has to be something here in the original code that it exploited, Marcus said. I know I can find it. The door to the lab opened and John Smith walked in. The man was terrifying, even though he seemed nice enough. He mostly scared me because he was so calm and collected, even with all the things that he did. How he didn't go mad from it all, I had no idea. Mr. Smith gave me a long look, then did the same with Marcus, who was ignoring him. Uh-oh, I thought. Mr. Smith seemed like someone you ignored at your peril. Good evening, Giannis, Marcus, he said. How long have you been here today? I opened my mouth to answer, but Marcus looked up angrily and said, What does it matter how long we've been here? We have to figure this out. Mr. Smith turned to me, and I looked at the clock. 14 hours, sir? His face went stony as he turned back to Marcus. Unacceptable, Mr. Roner. Marcus got up from his desk and stood in front of Mr. Smith, raising his voice. You may not give a shit about people dying, but I do. He raised his hand and pointed out of the lab. Chaos is still killing people out there and letting slavers have free reign. I can't stand by and let that happen. He was breathing heavily, then paled as if he finally remembered who he was talking to. Marcus took a step back, then said in a quieter voice, I'm sorry, sir, Mr. Smith held up a hand, his face a mask. I will forgive you this time, Marcus, but I'm relieving you of duty for a week. I'm going to have Sonny and some others look at the code while you take some time off. Blake is waiting for you. But, sir, Mr. Smith locked eyes with Marcus. Do not make me force you to leave this room, Mr. Roner, he said in a quiet and dangerous voice. Marcus gulped, looked at me for a moment, then nearly ran out of the room. I sighed in relief until Mr. Smith turned to me. You are to take the week off too, Giannis, he said. I may not experience emotion like neurotypical people, but I know how to read people enough to know when someone needs time to grieve. Throwing yourself into work like you've been doing isn't healthy for you. I opened my mouth, then shut it and nodded. There is another thing I would discuss with you before you go. He took a seat in the chair that Marcus had vacated. Why haven't you asked about survey technology to help with your spinal condition? I blinked in surprise. The Unity doctor said there wasn't anything else that could be done for me because of the nature of the break. And, well, it didn't occur to me to ask. Then I suggest you take some time this week to see the doctors. They did an initial scan of all of you when you arrived, standard procedure for civilians who travel in gel for more than an hour or two. The doctors can do a more detailed analysis and give you your options. They won't guarantee anything, but we can help you, even if it's just upgrading your chair to survey tech. He paused, as if deciding something. Giannis, I need to let you know that it may not be possible for you or your family to return to Geneva Colony. I'm looking into opportunities for you all, and some of those opportunities hinge on your decision about using survey medical interventions. Oh, I said, feeling a bit overwhelmed. Mr. Smith stood up. Go home to your family and talk it over. The doctors will see you whenever you decide to go. I didn't move for a moment, and Mr. Smith raised an eyebrow. I'm going, sir, I said. It's just that it's all overwhelming. We take care of our people, Giannis, said another voice, disembodied and from an unknown source. I've decided to grant you and your family citizenship since returning to Unity space will not be possible for the foreseeable future, if ever. Giannis, meet Sun Tzu, said Mr. Smith, and, congratulations. My mind churned rapidly as I connected the dots. The AI are real? I managed to blurt out after a moment. I am quite real, Giannis, the AI said. I don't talk a lot to Unity folks at first, since they usually react the way you just did. Holy shit, I mean... It's alright, Giannis. Would you introduce me to the rest of the family later? Some things will be easier if they know they can just speak to me when they need something, especially the children. The children? I asked. Children are extremely important to us in Survey, Giannis, said Mr. Smith. The AI never deny an answer to any child's questions. Sometimes children will ask the AI things that they are afraid to ask human adults. It is how we evaluate children, but also how we look for signs of distress or abuse. But also, more importantly, we believe children should never be denied information when they ask for it. Oh, that's reasonable. I took a deep breath. Then, I'll go now, sir. Thank you. 1 week, Giannis, Mr. Smith said. The code has been out for years. 1 more week isn't going to make it do anything different. I activated the chair, nodded to Mr. Smith, and left the computer lab. When I got back to our quarters, only Uncle Ben was in the living area. He was lounging on one of the couches reading his tablet. He looked up when he heard the door open. Hey, Giannis. Hi, I said. The weight of everything seemed to suddenly overwhelm me. I went to the printer and ordered a beer, and parked myself in the living area. You okay, Giannis? Asked Ben. I downed half the beer. Mr. Smith ordered us to take a week off, I said. Ben nodded. That's not a bad idea. You don't look so good. I haven't been sleeping well, I admitted. I can tell when I wake you in the morning. He swung his feet over the edge of the couch and put his tablet on the coffee table. Bad dreams? I nodded, fidgeted with my chair's joystick. Yeah, about Kai. Ben nodded, but didn't say anything. We were quiet for a few moments, then I said, Mr. Smith wants me to talk to the doctors here to see if they can help me with my spine. Really? Does he think they can do anything? He's not sure. He said he couldn't guarantee anything, but at the very least they could update my chair to Survey Tech. I sighed. You're afraid they won't be able to do anything at all? Asked Ben. Well, yeah. The Unity doctors couldn't do anything more, so... Ben shook his head. It's not a bad idea, he said. I heard rumors in Fleet of people with cancers or severe injuries going to Survey and getting healed. They rarely went back to Unity, though. I took a deep breath. Ben, we can't go back to Unity either. What? Mr. Smith and Sun Tzu think it'll be too dangerous. Ben looked confused. Who's Sun Tzu? Sun Tzu, this is my Uncle Ben, I said. Who are you? Ben started to say. Hello, Ben, I'm Sun Tzu, the AI of this ship, and Giannis is correct. If you go back to Unity, it's possible you could be arrested or otherwise targeted. Mr. Smith and I are looking into various options for your family. Some of those options depend on what Giannis decides to do about his treatments. Ben stared at me. They're real? I nodded. Yes, Ben, I am quite real, said Sun Tzu. Ben narrowed his eyes. Son of a bitch. He shook his head. I get why you'd let Unity think you were a myth, though. We'll need to tell the others in the morning. Everyone's taking some time alone tonight. I gathered since you were the only one out here, I said. Then good night, friends, and I look forward to talking to the others tomorrow, said Sun Tzu. Feel free to call on me if you need anything or would like to ask me questions. You can also call me Sonny. Thanks, Sonny, said Ben. Thanks, I said. Then it felt like Sonny had actually left the room. Okay, that's weird, said Ben. Yeah, definitely. Are you ready for bed, then? I nodded, drank down the last of my beer, and took the chair at a park. Ben pushed it down the hall to the bathroom. He helped me onto the toilet, taking my pants off and bringing the pajama pants I slept in over. I relieved myself. He cleaned me up and put on the pants and helped me back into the chair. "Should I see what the doctors have to say?" I asked Ben as he brought me into my bedroom. "I don't see why not, Giannis. I mean, if they can give you help, why not take it? Like I said, I've heard they have cures that are near miraculous." I didn't really know how to say what I was feeling. Ben put me on the bed, then took off my shirt. He held me up by the shoulders and looked into my eyes. "Don't punish yourself for what Kai did, Giannis." "But it was because of me." "No, Giannis. You were not responsible for his mental health, ever. He made the decision to leave us, not you." "But the last thing I said to him, I heard him, Uncle Ben." "What did you say?" I sighed and looked down. "I was trying to take the responsibility for the program, and Kai was insisting that he was also to blame. I told him that he had to stop protecting me out of guilt about the accident." Ben breathed out, then gently laid me down in the bed and tucked me in. He sat on the edge of the bed. "You weren't wrong, but he did help you with the program, from what you told us. Still, his guilt over the accident had been plaguing him ever since it happened." He wiped his eyes and said, "I'll tell you something, Giannis. I loved Kai with all my heart, but I'm really pissed at him for abandoning us instead of facing all of this with us. I'm pissed at him for making Nico think that he somehow did something bad because Kai isn't coming back. I'm pissed at him because we had to explain to the twins why their uncle is gone. And instead of being here to help you fix things, he took the easy way out." He looked at me again. "I was pissed at you too for a bit, for putting us in this position in the first place, but you thought of us first and arranged for us to come here. And, well, it's not Geneva, but it's not bad. I wouldn't blame any of you for being pissed off at me," I said. "Well, I can't speak for the others on that, but I'm not. I see your face in the mornings." I turned my head towards the wall and nodded. "Okay, Giannis, try and get some sleep," said Ben. I turned my head back to look at my uncle again. "Thanks, Uncle Ben," I said. He gave me a sad smile, patted my leg, then left the room. I stared after him for a moment, then said, "Lights." The lights turned off, but it was a long time before I actually slept. Chapter 34. Marcus. I stood outside of Blake's door, not sure if I should ring the bell or not. Part of me just wanted to go back to my quarters and lock myself in for the week. I was still kicking myself for being stupid enough to yell at John Smith. "John Smith ordered you to come here, Marcus," I reminded myself. Between Levy's death, Kai's death, and work, I felt like my mind was breaking. Couldn't remember who I was anymore. I took a deep breath and turned away from the door, thinking that I shouldn't unload this all on Blake. I hadn't gotten far when I heard the door open and Blake called my name. I turned to see them dressed only in a deep red silk robe. I'm not sure what they saw on my face, but they looked concerned. "Come in, Marcus," they said quietly. I hung my head and slowly walked towards them. When I was close enough, they gently took my hands and brought me into their sanctuary. Somehow they coaxed me onto the couch, where I curled up in a fetal position. Blake put a soft, fuzzy blanket over me, then moved around the room, dimming lights. After a few moments, they came back and tucked in a teddy bear plushie with me, then took off my shoes. Part of my mind questioned the teddy bear, but my body clung to it and the blanket like a child. Blake eventually climbed onto the couch, and when they settled, I crawled into their lap. Blake said soothing things to me, but I didn't really hear them over the noise in my head. I felt like I didn't deserve the comfort they were giving me. I loved Levy, didn't I? But I loved Blake too, I realized. Why? I said out loud. It was so senseless. Levy didn't need to be killed to stop us. Kai didn't have to jump off the mountain. Joseph didn't need to be killed. Why did I have to investigate this fucking program? I killed them all. No, Marcus. Chaos did, Blake said. I curled up tighter. I led chaos to them. But chaos must be stopped, right? I nodded, but... Blake wrapped their arms around me. This is the hardest part of the job for you as an agent, Marcus. You are doing the work that's necessary, and you know that it's necessary, but it does damage to you. Not only the damage of having to deal with the deaths of others, but the moral injury it causes you. The decisions you as an agent have to make are morally dubious most of the time, and having to decide between which bad thing will get the job done all the time adds to that injury. You have and will always have PTSD in this profession, Marcus. It's not something you can prevent, and it's not something you can run away from. You can't just bottle it up and work your way through it. It'll break you. I'm already broken, I said. No, you're not, or you wouldn't be here sitting on my lap, they said. What? If you were completely broken, Marcus, John wouldn't have sent you to me. Oh, I said. You need someone to talk to help you find your ground again. From what I heard about what happened on Geneva, if John hadn't sent you, I would have sought you out. Why? They kissed my head. Believe it or not, Marcus, I care a great deal about you. But do you think I begrudge you other loves? They asked. I looked up at them. How did you know about Levy? I didn't until now, but I accept that I won't be your only love. It's impossible in your line of work. Nor in mine, really. I shook my head. I don't understand. The people who come into your line of work have a vocation, not just a job. This is a calling for you, and you know you have a purpose here. Otherwise you would have left after the first couple of years and gone elsewhere. That is where your heart goes first. I also know that this work can take you away from me for months and years at a time. Why should I be mad if you find love and comfort while you're gone? Even if you left Sun Tzu permanently for another ship, I would still be happy for you. I would hope, though, that you'd still come back and visit me once in a while. I held on to the bear as I thought about what they said, and another thought bubbled up out of the others. I don't know if I want to go back into the field again, Blake. If you ask not to, you know John and Sonny will grant your request, they said. But why don't you put that thought aside until the end of the week? Right now is not the moment to be making big decisions. What is right now for? Right now, they said, is for telling me about Levy and your love for him. Right now is for talking to me about your grief and pain, or if you don't want to talk, right now is for curling up in my lap and letting me hold you. That reminds me a bit of what Lulu said on the ferry to Schweitz, I said. Who do you think she learned from? They said, with a bit of a laugh. Oh. I cuddled up closer to Blake and held the teddy bear tight. They didn't say anything more, but just sat patiently with me. How long we stayed like that, I didn't know, nor did I care. I was with Blake, and they cared about me, and they didn't judge me, or say that I was wrong, or blame me for anything. They just cared. After a while in their arms, I realized there were tears coming down my face. Then, as If I was given permission, all my grief came pouring out. I told them everything, how Levy and I met, about our time together, about the George, and Giannis's family, and Kai. Blake just listened to all of it. How do you take this all in? I finally asked, wiping my eyes. I'm a good listener, Marcus, and I have people I trust to go to when I need to let go, they said. I don't have many friends, I said. Not here. Not really in Unity either, especially when I went into UI. You have one, they said. Well, at least two, actually. Maybe a few more if you let them in. Oh? Me, silly. And Lulu, and Giannis, and even Sunny. And you can always make more friends here. This is Survey, Marcus, not Unity. We take care of our own. I nodded, not quite believing them, but I trusted them enough to let it be true. I sighed. I yelled at John earlier. He's a big boy, he can take it, Blake said. The thought of someone calling John a boy made me laugh, even if a bit hysterically. I looked up. Blake was chuckling too. It's hard to think of John as a boy, I said. I know, right? You're not the first to wonder if he was just hatched fully formed. He's old enough now that there aren't many people to ask about his younger years. Really? Wow. I was going to say something else, but then my stomach rumbled. We both started laughing again. We should take care of that. Let's get dressed up and find a nice restaurant to eat at, Blake suggested. But I need to go to my room and change. No, you don't. I have clothes for you here. I narrowed my eyes at them. You and John have been planning this since I got back. And Sunny too, a bit. But I asked them about you first. You did? They smiled and nodded. Okay then, but a private dining room, I said. Of course, they said, and kissed me. I smiled for the first time in what felt like weeks. The last day of my vacation was a quiet day, with just the two of us lounging in bed and talking. Part of me didn't want to go back to work, since I'd have to face Giannis and John again, but I felt bolstered by Blake's care and support. I was still missing Levy, but there was also room in my heart for loving Blake, and the more I got to know them, the stronger that felt. It wasn't the same love I felt for Levy, but Blake talked about that after we finished making love in the late afternoon. There are all kinds of love, Marcus, and they're all important. It doesn't matter if they're friends or lovers. You can have an intense and strong loving relationship with someone and not have sex. Conversely, you can have sex with someone and not be in love with them. Although, personally, I do need to like someone to some degree before I can have sex with them. That's why I'm choosy about who I serve. I have to have a connection with them, but that's how I work. Other servants don't need that kind of connection and can serve anyone who comes to them. But the love you had with Levy was unique and special, and you'll never replace his love. There will always be a hole in your heart where he should have been. Nor should anyone replace him. That was special between the two of you. New loves will be different, each and every one. It made a certain kind of sense to me, especially in this profession. I watched as Blake stretched, then got up off the bed. We should eat something, I suppose, they said. True, the bots are starting to get annoyed, I think. Blake laughed. Well, they are hungry little beasties. They bent down and gave me a long and gentle kiss. Why don't you print us something while I take a shower? I put on a pair of pajama pants and went to the printer, dialing in a full dinner and drinks. I waited on the couch while it printed, just staying quiet and listening to the shower. My mind turned towards Chaos's programming. What am I missing, I thought. I knew something wasn't right in the original code, but what? The printer chimed and I put our dinner on the table. The shower turned off, and after a couple of minutes, Blake came out of the bathroom in their bathrobe with their long hair wrapped in a towel. Ooh, that looks tasty, they said with a smile. I had a craving for Italian, I said. Good choice. We sat at the table and started eating. I don't envy you the task of going back to work on that code, they said. I know I'm missing something, but I can't figure out what. But thanks to you, I'm feeling more relaxed about it. So I think it's just a matter of time. They smiled. It reminds me of when I was at university on Lightbringer. They make everyone take a coding class in your first year, and I was abysmal at it. No matter what I tried, I'd always get some character or string wrong while writing it, making any program I wrote full of bugs. I thought the professor was going to toss me out of the class. Thankfully, he took pity on me. For my final, he made me write the simple Hello World basic program, which was the only program I could get to actually do what I wanted. He gave me a barely passing grade, and then I knew computers weren't for me. They laughed. Lucky for you, I went into psychology and became a servant. I laughed. Yes, I'm quite lucky. My programming brain caught up with the story, and I sat up straight in my chair. Wait, what did you say? He gave me a quizzical look. I went into psychology and became a servant? No, about your programming. That I'd always get a character or string wrong, making programs I wrote full of bugs? Yes, that's it! Chaos! It's exploiting a bug in its own code. I have to go, I said. I started towards the door, then turned around and went back to Blake. I took their face in my hands and kissed them soundly. You're a genius, and I love you. I am? You do? Yes, gotta run, I said. Don't you want to put on something other than pajamas? Blake asked, starting to giggle. I shook my head. No time! I don't want to forget this. Sonny, tell Giannis I'm on my way. I ran out of the room with Blake's gentle laughter following behind me. Chapter 35. Giannis. I woke up just as they were pulling my bed out of the testing tube. The doctor had said it would be a long time, but I hadn't expected to fall asleep. The nurse was standing next to me as I opened my eyes. Hey there. Did you have a nice nap? They said with a cheerful smile. Yeah, I answered groggily. How long was I in there? About an hour. The doctors asked Sonny to help them with some intensive scans. They wanted to get a really good look at the current state of your spinal column. They're discussing your options now. Oh, that's fast. The nurse nodded. Survey medicine usually is. Sonny's helping them with the analysis. He's able to come up with possibilities much faster than the doctors can. So, are you ready to get out of that thing? I nodded, and the nurse wheeled my bed out of the diagnostics area and back into the general med bay. They lifted me up and held me back in my chair, then brought me to a waiting area. Would you like something to eat or drink? I can get you something from the printer. I thought for a moment. A nutrition shake would be fine. Do you have something that's not too sweet? They smiled. We have quite the extensive selection. What kind of flavors do you like? We have everything from sweet to savory. Actually, let me show you the list. They pulled out a tablet, tapped it, and handed it to me. On it was a long list of nutrition drink flavors. I scrolled through them, amazed at some of the combinations. Wow, you're right. That really is extensive. The nurse laughed. The story goes that a former John Smith had a food aversion that made it hard for him to eat regular food, so he basically lived on nutrition shakes. Problem was that he liked the flavor of food, so he started making new recipes. Well, a psychologist who was partners with the first admiral and gotten bots was overjoyed to have more options and begged him to share his recipes with the medical corps. Hence, the list. I raised my eyebrows, impressed. Well, that John Smith is a saint. Thai peanut curry, please, I requested, handing them back the tablet. They nodded and laughed. Too true. Good choice. That's a survey favorite. I'll be right back, they said, and left the room. They came back with the shake just as Dr. Morgan came into the waiting room. Here you go, Giannis, said the nurse, putting the sealed cup in my cup holder. Doctor? I said, nodding and left. The doctor nodded back, then turned to me. Well, Giannis, we've finished our analysis, so why don't you come back to my office and we can discuss your options? All right, I said, feeling nervous as I followed him. He held the door to his office open as I drove my chair in and parked it in front of his desk. I was surprised that he had already moved the chair that was usually there. Then again, everyone in Survey seemed to make sure that everywhere I wanted to go was accessible. Dr. Morgan closed the door and sat down. So, Giannis, I won't bore you with the specifics of your injury since I know you've probably heard it all before, except to say that aside from aging, nothing's changed. The good news is that the break is something we can compensate for with our nanobots. Unfortunately, what we can do for you at your age will be limited. If we had been able to do this when you were a child, when the break was still new, we probably could have recovered about 90% mobility. Seriously? I said, surprised. Yes, but since we didn't see you as a child, we can give you two options. For both options, we'll be using nanobots to both repair and support your nervous and muscular systems. The first option is that we give you the same nanobots that Sun Tzu's field agents use to improve their muscle tone and agility. While they'll improve your overall health and muscle tone, the only improvement in mobility will be in the upper body. We'd be able to give you movement in both arms and improvement of the nerves and some of your internal organs. This would mean that with intensive physical therapy, you'd be able to move yourself in and out of your chair and do some of your own personal care like bathing and going to the toilet. We would, of course, modify your chair to help as well. The bots would also enhance your neural inputs, and you'd be able to use either manual or neural inputs for computing. These types of bots would still allow you to go on planet if you wanted. The second option is to give you the same type of high-order quantum bots that we give captains of AI ships. This isn't an option that we employ often, except in cases like yours, as there are more side effects and limitations. The benefit of these bots is that they interact with your brain and nervous system to compensate for the severed nerves, and could give you up to 70% mobility, including walking. At best, you'd likely have to use a crutch or a cane, depending on how well your body takes to the bots. At worst, you'd have full upper body mobility and the ability to stand, but you'd have to still utilize a chair for getting around. The problem with these bots, however, is that you would never be able to leave flat space, as the bots require connection with the AI in flat space in order to work properly. You'd be able to move from ship to ship or ship to station, but you can never go into a planetary system again. The other side effect would be that you would be able to talk to any of the AIs directly through your bots, almost like the concept of telepathy. If you were a captain, they'd be tuned to your particular AI, but as you're not a captain, you'd have open bots. The AIs do respect privacy, and you'd be able to turn the comms on and off as necessary, so this would not be too intrusive. The doctor paused, collecting his thoughts. Regardless, as I said, both options would require extensive physical therapy. The procedure and subsequent physical therapy could be done on any ship. Normally, I'd send folks to Lightbringer, as they're the most medically advanced of the survey ships, and have more specialists. Alternatively, Hiram or Musashi would be the next best choice. Both ships have the necessary expertise, since we tend to get more debilitating injuries due to the nature of the work of our people. I was completely stunned. I just stared at the doctor in disbelief, my shake forgotten. But the Unity doctor said there was nothing that could be done. And now you're telling me I could possibly stand or even walk again? The doctor frowned. Unfortunately, the bots aren't tech we can actually give to Unity, as they require an AI to manufacture. Considering how many patients we get from Unity each year, I wish we could, but we're protective of the AIs and their products. He sighed, and I got the impression that he'd prefer to make it available to all humanity. He looked me in the eye. I'll be honest with you, Giannis. Both procedures will require long-term, intense physical therapy, as most of your body has atrophied to some extent, even with the regular physical therapy you were getting on Geneva. It will not be easy, and there is a very slim chance of rejection. It's unlikely, but it's not zero. Morgan waited patiently for me to say something, but I didn't even know what to say. The idea that there was even a remote possibility of walking again, even with the restriction, was too overwhelming to think about. I took a few deep breaths and said, I need to think about it. He nodded with a gentle smile. I figured as much. This is a huge deal. I'd recommend talking to someone, and not just your family. We have therapists on board and servants who also have psychology degrees. You could even talk to Sunny if you like. All of them can help you sort out your feelings around this. I could send recommendations to your tablet if you like. Okay, I said. But, who are servants? Oh, how to describe servants? Morgan thought for a moment. Well, I suppose on Earth they'd go with the crude term prostitute, but servants are much more than that. A lot of them are clinical therapists in their own right, but instead of just talking, they will also use companionship, touch, sex, or BDSM to help their clients. One used to tell me that they were more like ancient courtesans than prostitutes, as they are all highly educated in a number of subjects outside their specialties. However, it's up to you how you want to proceed. Both the regular therapists and the servants require consent before they work with you. I don't know if anyone's explained it to you, but in Survey, consent and bodily autonomy are extremely important. You would never be pressured into making a decision like this by me nor anyone else in Survey. I see. I'm grateful for that. Morgan tapped his desk and my tablet chimed. There, I've sent you some recommendations for both therapists and servants, and a summary of your options. When you know what you want to do, come back here and see me, okay? Yes, Doc, you've given me a whole lot to think about. Came out from behind his desk and opened the door for me. I know, Giannis. This is a lot to take in all at once. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon, and if you have any questions about the medical stuff, just send me a message or come by. Thanks, I said, and left the office in a daze. The day after I'd come back from the doctor's, I was sitting in the living room, still thinking about what I should do. When I told the family about what the survey doctors could do for me, everyone had an opinion on what I should do. Una and Lena thought I should go for the full bots, even though it meant I couldn't go on planet again. Ben agreed with them. Mommy, Poppy, and Yuri thought I should go with the lower order bots so that if we were ever able to go on planet again, I could go with them. The one thing they all agreed on, though, was that the final decision had to be mine. Later, I was pretending to read in the living area while Una was giving the kids their evening lessons. The twins were working on a project together quietly while Una was having a writing and drawing lesson with Nico. What are you drawing, Nico? She asked. George, he said. Ah, I see. Do you remember how to write the word George? Nico thought for a moment, nodded and said, Uh-huh. He bent over the paper, concentrating on writing the letters as he said them out loud. G-E-O-R-G E. Very good, Nico. Nico looked up to the ceiling. Sana? Yes, Nico, replied Sunny. Nico had taken to talking to the AI as if it were another friend or parent. Do you like George? I have never met the George except for yours, Nico. I do like your George, though. I also like the George you've drawn. I miss the big George, Nico said. You do? Said Una. Yeah, but I have my George, so it's okay. And I have my uncas, and Oma, and Opa, and Mama, and Mommy, and Sana, and Auntie Jessa, and my friends at school. That's right, Nico. You have lots of people to help you. And you have your George, said Una. All the AIs are your friends, Nico, Sunny said. All the AIs like children, and none of them will think you're silly for asking questions, and will answer you the best they can. Nico's eyes opened wide. All of them? How many is that? There are 7 big ones and lots of smaller ones. I'm one of the big ones, along with my siblings Musashi, Lucifer, Hestia, Hephaestus, Secundus, and my father, the First. We lead all the smaller ones. I can read you a story later about how we were made and what each of us does. Wow! What you do, Sana? I'm the keeper of the library, and I have copies of all the books and videos and music ever made. I also help my humans collect and go through information so that we can keep people like you safe. Oh, Nico said, and went back to drawing. He colored a bit more with a green crayon, then put the crayon down. Senna, can you make another fuzz, George? Yes, Nico, I'll print it now. The materials printer started up. Una and I looked at each other, and Una shrugged. We watched as Nico got down from the chair he was sitting in to go to the printer. He watched it in fascination as the George plushie slowly materialized. Just before it was finished, he dragged one of the chairs over to the printer, climbed up, and when the chime signaled the plushie was finished, he took it out of the printer. Una's eyes were wide and her eyebrows were up in her hair. Nico held the plushie to his chest and stroked it as if making sure the plushie was a proper George. The toddler nodded, satisfied, climbed down off the chair, and toddled over to me. Hello, Nicolai, I said. I come up. Sure, I said, patting my lap. He climbed up on me carefully, as he usually did, sat down so he could face me, and said, This is your George. Nico pushed the plushie to my chest. You has a sad, so you need a George. You can't have my George, so I make a new one. I blinked the tears back and cleared my throat a couple of times before I said, Thank you, Nico. Thank you very much. You're right. I do need a George. I hugged the plushie with my left hand. I didn't dare look at Una or I'd start crying. Nico, his mission completed, climbed back down and went back to his schoolwork. I could hear Una sniffling a bit as she went back to teaching him his letters. I smiled. Nico is really special, I thought. Amazed just what happened. Giannis, said Sonny, interrupting my thoughts. Yes, Sonny, I said, watching Nico. Marcus told me to tell you that he's on his way to see you. Before I could reply, the door chimed. I assume that's him. You might as well let him in, Sonny. The door opened, and a half-dressed Marcus ran in, straight towards me. I know what it is! What? I asked, confused. Chaos! It's exploiting a bug in its own code. I'm guessing that we couldn't find it in the original because Chaos didn't find it in the code at first, but I bet that one of the later generations found it and used it. That could explain why it escaped the sandbox. But how do we find the bug? We have a sentient AIs, Giannis. Sonny, could you help us find it? Of course, the AI said. Although you might want to finish your dinner with Blake and have a good night's rest. Both of you should sleep, actually. That's not a bad idea, I said, now suddenly tired. Marcus blinked and looked at me. Nico gave you his George again? No, he asked Sonny to make me my own, I said, with a catch in my voice. I cleared my throat. Do you realize that you're only in pajama pants? Marcus turned bright red. Yes, I left in a hurry to tell you so I wouldn't forget. We do have access to a sentient AI, you know. Well, right. Marcus laughed and sat on the couch. Sorry for bursting in like that, he said. Una laughed. It's okay, Marcus. We have a nearly 3-year-old. We're used to that kind of thing. Although sometimes he runs around without any clothes on at all, she said. The twins laughed. Nico pouted and said, Sometimes clothes no fun. Una put her hand to her mouth, and I thought Marcus was going to hurt himself to keep from laughing. That's right, Nico. Sometimes clothes are no fun, even as an adult, Marcus said. I couldn't help it then and just burst out laughing. Una did too. The twins looked confused, shrugged, and went back to their tablets. Nico laughed with us. When we finally settled down, Una said, Okay, you three, time to get ready for bed. I'm not sleepy, said Nico, as the twins headed for their room. If you get ready for bed, Nico, including brushing your teeth, I'll come in later and we can read a bedtime story to our George, I said. Yeah, he said and ran for his bedroom. Nice one, big brother, said Una as she followed after him. Marcus shook his head. I'll have to make this up to Blake, but it was worth coming here for that. He sobered. Listen, I shook my head. It wasn't your fault, Marcus. But, no, Kai's mental health wasn't your problem. There was a lot more to it than the consequences of chaos. Marcus didn't look entirely convinced, but nodded. Who's Blake? Blake is... Well, they're a servant, but we've become a lot closer than that. Marcus blushed. I rolled my eyes. Oh, jeez, Marcus. You could have waited until after your dinner with them, I said. I'll go back at him, he said with a laugh. Are you ready to start working again? I can start the analysis of Sunny if you need more time. No, I can work on it. I'll see you in the morning. Marcus nodded. I'll be there by 10. I don't want to rush making up with Blake. He gave a wink, then left. I shook my head and decided that I'd go and talk to one of these servants myself in the next couple of days. Turning my chair towards Nico's room, I hugged my George and felt, finally, like something was shifting. You have been listening to Tales from Flat Space. If you want to support me and my writing, there are many ways to do it. Share this podcast, follow me on my Twitch channel, or buy my books. All you have to do is go to revginapon.net and click on the relevant links. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next time.